Hey, what's up guys and gals? My name is Ricknineg. I want to welcome all of you to my channel, of course, especially the new subscribers, as well as the classic ones, the ones who've been here for so long. I appreciate you watching and supporting the content that I do. So today we're going to talk about the movie Arrival. This is a 2016 movie that stars Amy Adams as well as Jeremy Renner. So you may think, well, what's so interesting about this movie? What is this movie about? It's basically about aliens, extraterrestrials coming from another planet, and I really like the visuals of what was going on. You know, when we usually imagine aliens, we imagine flying saucers and all that, and this was like a weird shape. They were kind of like oblong cylinders, but they came to a point, or like a round point. They were huge, gigantic, and those visuals is what really drew me to the movie in the first place. Now I've seen like the Twilight Zone, where there's an episode of Arrivals and things like that. I've seen Star Trek First Contact, so I kind of have an idea of these movies. And so I was excited to watch. I wasn't too hot with the cast, although Forest Whitaker I think is pretty good. In some movies I think he's pretty good, in other movies, you know, kind of mediocre. Amy Adams, I think she did really good. Like, she took the part by the horns and did a great job. Jeremy Renner, of course, is in the Avengers movie series playing Hawkeye, and to me he's just like there. He's just like an extra character. Hawkeye isn't like the most exciting character, and that's why I feel he's kind of in this movie. He plays second to Amy Adams, and he's not the most exciting character. He's just there. He's just like a support. He's kind of like the lamp in the room. You need it, but it doesn't really help much. That's the complete honesty. So the aliens come, and in the beginning you have a really good shots and atmosphere of a little bit of chaos, and that was interesting because the movie starts out like that.
Russia just executed one of their own to keep their secret.
Got 21 hours
before they start global war.
But then you get all these flashbacks with Amy Adams and flash forwards and all these things where it's like confusing, like what's going on? There's baby, then the baby's born. It's very confusing. Like, you don't know what's going on. And then it goes back to all the chaos, and so it's like, okay, the story has to do with these flashbacks and so forth. So we have the Arrival coming and them saying, well, how do we communicate with these beings who are not communicating to us? So they find Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner, who are basically linguists. And to me, this was the most interesting part of the movie. It was just unique. The idea of how to communicate with beings that there's English, obviously, and then there's no way of starting. Like, how do you start? How do you explain to something else that is never even heard? It's like completely foreign, the language, your language. So my name would be Rick, and so how do you say my name Rick? Like, are you saying I'm human, Rick? You know, so it's like all these really interesting things, and that was a quarter of the movie, I would say. At some point it got kind of repetitive, but then it kind of took pace. I rather enjoyed that. I wish they would have fleshed it out a little bit more. I don't want to get into the idea of really what happened and to the story too much. You're going to have to watch that if you decide to watch the movie. But it was interesting. And what I really hate, and I say this in a couple reviews, are dark scenes in movies. I understand there needs to be darkness, but there are ways to illuminate scenes where you can still see the characters and it still be dark. I don't mean like spotlights on these characters, but to be able to see, because sometimes it's like the whole scene is dark and they're just talking. You're like, what's going on? Are they hunched? Are they standing up? Are they talking close? Are they far apart? You got a lot of that in the beginning. Then later you got a lot less dark scenes. I'm not against slow pacing. I actually like it when it's done well, in my opinion. I would say at some point the movie did lull in pacing, where it's like, okay, let's pick it up. You're giving a lot of details where, like, we get it. I understand what's going on. And then it's like for example, a hug, like a reuniting hug. They get the hug. It's like, and they're there, and there's like no words, and they're just hugging for like 30 seconds. And it's like, do you really need to show that long of a hug? And then they just stay together. They look at each other, and they hug again. And it's like, again? I can't explain it, but there are things like that I'm like, why did this director decided to do that? They could have done more linguist stuff, more interesting stuff. The idea of the aliens was all right for me. It wasn't like spectacular. I think one of the drawbacks of this movie, one of the things that was missing, was that shock factor. The only shock factor I got was in the beginning with the emergency scenes, and then these craft arriving in different countries all over the world. I think that was pretty good. There was a few times where there was like impending danger and so forth, but other than that, it was like, okay. And when it came to the ending, I'm not going to tell you what happened, but it was very predictable. I was like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. Oh, I understand. Although some movies where it's like, what? Spider-Man Homecoming, you should see that review that I have. That there was a place 3/4 in the movie where I was like, what? That is nuts, like genuine. Like it completely floored me, and I was like, what is wrong? Nothing like this in this movie. It was very predictable. At times it even went too much into the linguist thing. Honestly, I don't know if this movie was my cup of tea. It was very well done, but it was very mediocre, to be honest with you. It wasn't anything that I would say, you need to watch this movie because it's going to change your life. You need to watch this movie. It was even a bit entertaining, not completely entertaining, if that makes sense. I know I'm maybe going back and forth, but I'm settling in a very middle position. It was very mediocre. To be honest with you, I have a few notes here having to do with the linguist and the plot, and I don't think I even need to go through those, guys and gals. This movie underwhelmed me a little bit. I was expecting a little bit more. I liked the direction it took with the linguist and how to communicate and their forming sentences and things like that. That development was great, but then at one point it just got old. It just was like, okay, I get it, you can communicate now. And then the story took a bit of a turn, which was, again, pretty predictable. I was like, well, of course this is going to happen. And then at the end, I wouldn't even say it was a twist. I was like, oh, okay, there was a piece missing of the movie. You kind of understood what had to happen at the end. The piece was there, and I was like, okay, it made sense. So, guys and gals, I was struggling with what to rate this movie, and I was going back and forth between grades. Like I said, this was a mediocre film. It wasn't bad by any means. Maybe it wasn't my cup of tea. Maybe you guys will like it more because of the linguistic aspect. It was just a mediocre, fairly good movie. So I'm going to give this movie a C+. I was actually debating whether to give it a B+, but I think, B-, one step up. But I think a C+ kind of encompasses where I'm at. Would I see it again? Would I jump at seeing it again? Probably not. Am I opposed to see it again? No, not really. But again, it's not anything that I would jump into. But if this interests you, the idea of linguistics, talking to aliens, and then a fairly interesting story that was fairly predictable, then go ahead and watch it. Amy Adams does a pretty good job, and I think it is worth it just to watch her if you're a big fan. So thank you guys and gals for watching. Tell me what you think in the comments below if you have seen it, or maybe want to see it, and maybe you have a different opinion. I would love to hear it. We'll see you next time, and don't forget, be hopeful.